Well, unsurprisingly, the migrant hotel story runs on and on. Protests again today in Epping, outside the Bell Hotel. Interestingly, this time, it's less about the individuals in the hotel and what they're accused of, and it's more about the way Essex police have organised things. And I have to say, can you imagine if there was a Palestinian march through London and there was a counter-Jewish march to it? Can you imagine that the police would escort the Jewish march up to the Palestinian march to meet them face to face? Of course they wouldn't, because they would know that violence would erupt. And yet that is exactly what happened in Epping a couple of days ago, and people are pretty furious about it. We also learnt today, it was a Daily Mail story, that these asylum seekers are given what are called Aspin cards. They get about 40 quid a week to spend on an Aspin card, and we learnt that in the last year, 6,500 of these young men have been using the money to spend in betting shops. And I have to say, every story that comes out around these undocumented young males coming into Britain, about the cost of it, about what it all means, is pushing people to a point, I think, of increasing anger. So how much more of this can the public endure? Love to get your thoughts. Farage at GBNews.com. I am joined in the studio by Fiona Lali, campaigns coordinator for the Revolutionary Communist Party, though I suspect that is past tense given what's happened with Jeremy Corbyn today, but we'll talk about that. I'm joined by Lord Glasman, Labour peer and leader of the Blue Labour movement, and Linda Duberley, for the first time on this programme, long-time journalist and broadcaster, worked for many channels over the years. Let's start with the view of revolutionary communist, Corbynista. Do you understand, Fiona, why the protest began outside the Bell Hotel just a few days ago?
Yeah, I do understand. These protests are the result of capitalist media and capitalist politicians like yourself.
Capitalists?
Spending all of their political career. I mean, your political career is really built on weaponising the fears and the insecurities that people have in their lives.
What, being raped?
And horrific things, the most horrific things that can happen to people. You weaponise these events for your political career, which is built on lies, and you say that the problems, the source of all of this, comes from other poor people in society, rather than the real criminals, the biggest criminals, the people who are responsible, not just for horrific individual acts of violence, but the systemic violence that people face every single day as a result of austerity,
so if you
as
were
a result of the cost of living crisis.
If you were a mum...
And that's the result of capitalism and Starmer.
This has got nothing...
That's what you're distracting.
Let me
distracting from that.
Look, it's Fiona, it's all good textbook stuff, but I'm going to put a human point to you, right? A non-political point to you. If you were a mum living in that part of Essex, and you knew that a young male, undocumented male, God knows where he came from, had been charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl, would you as a mum in that part of Essex be happy to let your teenage kids out?
Of course, it's a horrific thing that has happened.
Would you be happy?
Can say that.
Answer my question.
It's not very profound to say that rape or assault is a bad thing. Everyone can agree on that.
So would you as a mum...
If you were genuinely concerned...
No. Would you as a mum living in Epping be concerned about what was going on?
I'm sure many mums are concerned. There are many people on these protests are concerned. Some of them, we can say, are not just concerned. Some of these people are verified neo-Nazis, right? Fascists.
I like Antifa with masks chucking bottles at the police.
And you're weaponising that concern.
No, I'm not.
You're weaponising that concern.
I'm sorry,
And by doing these lies, you're defending the biggest criminals in Britain. That's what your career is about.
I'm not far right. I'm worried about my kids. Make Epping safe again.
Do you want to save a boatload of cash this summer, wherever you have a trip planned? The one thing you're going to need is access to the internet and on the go. And you can do that easily with Saily. Hit the link in the description to get 15% off your first eSIM plan ready for your trip so you can browse to your heart's content. Saily gets you a local SIM card you can use when travelling so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a message or check the latest news. Now, they've got plans in over 160 countries, 8 regions, so pretty much everywhere Wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? All you've got to do is this. Hit the link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan. You can choose an amount of data and time frame that suits you best. And then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. And if that wasn't enough, Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once. So when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and boom, you're back watching me on GBNews. I'll be using a Saily SIM on my next holiday because it's actually faster than some of the hotel Wi-Fis. You can get unlimited data if you want, so you can scroll away to your heart's content. And when you leave the hotel, you don't have to do that annoying thing of Wi-Fi hopping because you've got constant connectivity wherever you go. And they've got 24/7 support as well and a full refund policy if your eSIM isn't compatible. So get sorted for your next trip. Download Saily using the link in the description below. And if you use the code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us. So click the link, download Saily, and use the code NEWS at checkout.
Sure.
Linda, as a mum, do you understand why these protests started?
I understand precisely why those protesters are out there. I've got 3 children, probably one of them isn't very far from your age. And if my daughter had to deal with anything like the young girl, which was the target of the alleged assault, I would be tremendously worried. Now, what I think is happening here is I think you're intellectualising and theorising the situation. How many asylum hotels have you been inside?
I haven't been inside.
Right, well, I've been inside 5, and I've met hundreds. Let me finish. You had your turn. I then went inside 5 hotels, and I delivered 3 separate English language programmes to try and empower women. I was the Women's Empowerment Director of an Afghan charity. So when people talk to me about me being too hard and too right, let me tell you that I fought in the trenches when it mattered to those women. But I will also tell you that when I was up at the House of Commons, and actually I got into conversation with one of the borough commanders in London, and he told me he was so concerned that one of the hotels on his patch was a powder keg because it was a male-only hotel. I listened to him because I'm not listening, therefore, to an intellectual debate. I'm listening to someone who is genuinely worried about what might happen at one of these hotels.
And Linda, it's fair to say, you've worked with Afghan women and well done you. But it's true, isn't it, that these young men that come from Afghanistan, for example, are coming from a culture in which women, frankly, aren't even second-class citizens. Their attitudes to how they can behave towards women are culturally entirely different to what we would accept.
Very different. One of the things that, because there were many moments that really gratified me, and one of them was an elderly woman who, not only could she not write, she didn't know how to hold the pen. And that is because, she told me, she came from a family where she wasn't valued. She was just like a human incubator or a servant for the family. The first time she saw her name written down on a piece of paper, she cried. Wow. So I was dealing with people like that. So it matters to me. It matters enormously to me.
I don't think it does. I think you're trying to tell us...
Are you saying Linda's wrong in what she's saying?
I think that you're trying to pretend that you have a genuine solution or a genuine this whole
That's extraordinary.
For the problems
that is extraordinary to say that to me.
Religions.
Extraordinary.
And I'm here because I want to say the truth. I agree that Britain is a powder keg. You said... Let me finish.
Why is it a powder keg?
I agree that Britain is a powder keg right now. There is so much anger in society, and people are really angry in Epping and in loads of other places as well. That anger isn't just expressed through protests outside of hotels. That anger is trying to be expressed in so many different ways, through strikes that are taking place, because people are angry over their conditions in life. They're angry over the NHS. They're angry. It's not different.
You're right about frustration inside.
And when you try and siphon it off, it's part of your defence.
This is about a community.
You don't want to talk about the huge, horrific situation in Britain today.
Are you happy for young, undocumented males to come into this country in huge numbers?
When you say this, again, that is not the reason that everyone's life in Britain is getting worse right now.
Shall I tell you why those young
That is not the reason.
Shall I tell you why those young mums in Essex are so worried?
They've said themselves they're scared about violence. And violence comes from the whole of the British establishment.
Do you know what? We're a free speech channel, which means you listen to everybody. Afghan
covered
men
up.
are 22 times
covered
more
up.
likely to be convicted of rape than British-born males. There is a massive cultural
If you want
problem.
to talk about, rape
the
and
country
assault,
is very
let's
upset,
talk
isn't
about
it?
the cover-up in the Church of
Very
England. Let's
upset.
talk about the cover-up
Yeah.
on the
I'm also
BBC.
upset.
Let's give him a chance.
I'm also upset. because
Let's
the
talk
revolution-
about Trump
I tell you
and
what,
the
behave
Epstein
with
files.
manners,
It's the
behave
whole
with manners or
establishment.
disappear. It's entirely up to you. This is a fair, we're fair to everyone. This channel, I tell you what, the BBC wouldn't have you on tonight. And we beat the BBC in numbers yesterday across the day. This channel gives everybody free speech, but respect the right of others. Maurice.
Yeah, and the Revolutionary Communist Party used to be intellectually robust, so I'm also upset about that. Yeah, the country is absolutely disgusted. And just something, Nigel, I don't call them asylum seekers anymore. They're coming from France. They can claim asylum in France. These are illegal immigrants. Yeah. They're unwelcome and we don't want them. And I think we've got to really concentrate on this, that there's a democratic will in the country. There's been repeated time and again in democratic elections that they want the sovereign nation state, the democratic sovereign nation state, to get a grip on the borders.
Right? Absolutely true.
This is what we...
Well, I guess if you don't control your borders, you're not really a sovereign state, are you?
That's the point.
Yes.
And we went through that, Nigel, together in the Brexit referendum. Yeah. We've established a democratic mandate for sovereignty, for the control of borders. By the way, you can't have socialism without sovereignty. You can't have socialism without state control or state direction of the economy. But this used to be mainstream Marxism, which obviously doesn't matter in the Revolutionary Communist Party anymore.
If you want to talk about Marxism,
No, this is serious.
In a couple of minutes, we will talk about
this whole systematic establishment.
Maurice, keep going.
So what we've got to do is absolutely make sure that we have effective control of borders. Now, that's where I want the conversation to go now towards action.
Well, the problem is the public now have no confidence. This government was elected saying it would smash the gangs. And the argument I've made time and time again is it doesn't matter whether you catch all the smugglers, give them life sentences, the financial rewards are so great, the more people will come up, won't they?
Absolutely. And I've had this conversation on several other programmes on GBNews. And my view is to try and deal with this situation, you've got to pull on all the levers. You've got to be operational. So you do have to do something hands-on about the boats. But you have to have a strategy in place where you start dealing with this, because this is a network of traffickers. This is not just, you need to get the drug dealer on the corner of the street. You have to go right to the source of drug dealing. And the same is true with human trafficking. You have to get to the network and you have to cut the head off the snake.
But even if... No, I'm going to argue, Linda, that sounds fine, but it doesn't work.
It's hard to do.
But it doesn't work. Because you think about it. A boat with 90 people on, crossing the channel, each paying €2,500 to €3,000. The financial rewards are so great that even if you cut the network, others will find ways to do it. It's the pull factors that are the problem. I mean, the very fact that you're given an Aspin card that you can use at the local betting shop kind of sums up why people are coming, I think.